The Chiefs' offensive line is on fire. Does it come down to forget or light it up and move on? Today, we talk about Orlando Brown's contract extension possibility out there in the ether on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Out there is right. It seems like most of Kansas City is in an uproar. We're going to talk about the why, the when, the hair, and what all this means for Orlando Brown and the Chiefs offensive line in 2022. This is Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free on every platform. If you would like, sub and hit the bell on YouTube and subscribe to us over on the audio platforms like Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts, we would greatly appreciate it. We cover this team every day for you, and we have been for 6 years on this show. We've covered this team collectively for close to 20 between the two of us. Not a newcomer, not anything that you have to question. We will give you the straight facts on this team. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting at RogueAPC.com.
And I'm Chris Clark. You can find me over at Chiefs Corner, where I'm hoping to have a lot more information on this Brown contract, because I still think the deal gets done. I do want to preface this whole conversation with that. But there is something to talk about, and I do also want to say, before we really get into the nitty-gritty of all of it, I did a show last Thursday. I kind of broke down what I thought maybe Kansas City could make a deal, and it would actually give them top left tackle money, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but what we really need to focus on is what's happened over the past 3 or 4 days. And that's Mike Garofalo coming out 3 or 4 days ago, I believe, and saying he expects this deal to get done. The teams are going to talk during the week, and he expects the deal is going to get done. Now, it's a complete 180, and he's expecting it's not going to get done, and that Orlando could be sitting out well into maybe even the season.
To quote Kevin Costner, we live in a world that has drastically changed in the last 2 days.
Yep.
And this is, it all comes down to this. We're going to have the debate, folks. We're going to tell you what it means for Orlando. We're going to meet and tell you what it means for his agent. We're going to tell you what it means for the team and where their perspectives are. But bottom line, right now, the only winner in this situation is Mike Garofalo on the NFL Network, because this is fire for him. And this is absolutely normal for every single high-dollar contract that gets negotiated. None of this surprises me. This is all tools of the trade. I'll give credit to Orlando's new agent, because he's acting like a vet in spilling this out into the public, because that creates a little bit of outside pressure on the organization.
Yeah, and we absolutely know that this came from Orlando Brown. And if it didn't come from directly Orlando Brown or his agent, it came from Jamal Brown, who is also working in concert with Orlando, trying to get a contract done with Kansas City. But basically, they came out and they said that Kansas City's offering top right tackle money at $19 million a year. He wants $23 million a year.
Yeah. Sorry, Orlando, that's what you're worth.
We'll get into that discussion here in a little bit, but it's key to me to say that it's obvious to me where this information is coming from, because Kansas City's not leaking what they're offering or what Orlando's asking for.
Right.
That's not how they work. That's never how they've worked. They're not going to leak it through somebody. It's going to be it's got to be coming from a player or somebody around the player. So it doesn't shock me that we're here. It doesn't shock me that it's gotten to this point. I'm okay with it either way, really, honestly. This is how negotiations work. The only thing Orlando can do is say that he will not show up for training camp and the regular season. And the reality is that if he does that, he's going to lose money that he'll probably never be able to get back.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that's a true scenario here either.
I mean, he can't get fined. Here's the logistics. He cannot get fined because he's not under contract. So he can skip out on training camp. He doesn't get paid but a pittance during training camp. It's game checks that matter. So he can do whatever he wants. And quite frankly, he needs the reps. It is useful for him, but he has played in this league long enough that it is not going to handicap him in any serious way, other than the fact that he will not be in playing shape if he shows up week one. Now, if he doesn't show up week one, that threat is out the door, in my opinion.
I disagree with you, though.
Well, you're not allowed. You'll have to wait for the second segment to disagree with me.
I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say it puts him at least 3 or 4 weeks behind just because he's playing at a new body weight, he's going to be playing at a new style. He's going to have to make adjustments, and it's going to put him weeks behind. And it's not just the aspect of getting in playing shape. It's also getting, ready for, what's new on offense. How are they going to change things offensively from what they did last year? All of that's going to change. So to me, I think he's at least 2 weeks behind if he doesn't show up for training camp.
If he were a skill player, I'd be more concerned about it. You're right. There is going to be a lot of new wrinkles. There is every year for Andy Reid, but being an offensive lineman, I don't think it's that drastic. So maybe I over exaggerated. Maybe he's a week or two behind, but it's certainly, I don't think, going to be a major impact. So I don't think it's a threat that the organization has to really worry about, because if he pulled it, all he's doing is hurting his long-term performance. And that's really what he has to be focused on, because no matter what happens now, unless they reach a deal, he has to play well this season in order to cultivate a following and interest or somebody next season. Or otherwise, the Chiefs will just tag him again. And honestly, that dollar amount you're going to tell me, I think, is affordable and probably the best scenario for the organization itself. We're going to talk about that in the upcoming segment here in just a second. But I got to tell you, because hindsight's 2020, and you can change what you've done in the future, but you can't change the past. You got to take advantage of it when you can. Maybe you would borrow a little cash from somebody, and we have something to help you. And that's Dave, our newest sponsor. It's a banking app that lets you get $500 instantly with extra cash. You can put it in your gas tank. Lord knows mine needs it. You can use it as a wedding gift. You can catch up on bills, whatever you need. You can finally get to tackle those expenses that are stressing you out. And it's all just for signing up and getting yourself going. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get that financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch, or you need some help, or you just want to take advantage of a good deal, this future is for you. All you have to do is download the Dave app at the App Store right now. That's DAVE, like the guy's name. Sign up for the extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, you have to go to dave.com/legal. An instant transfer fees apply. Banking is provided by Evolve, a member of the FDIC. The future will thank you, and I think you'll thank them as well.
Compensated spokesperson advances up to $500 are available to new members with extra cash accounts, subject to availability and approval. Terms and express fees apply. See dave.com/legal for details. Designed by Dave, not a bank. Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. Holds all deposits and issues the Dave debit card pursuant to a license from MasterCard.
It's a lot. Thanks for saying all that. So let's take it in this direction. From the player's perspective, and we should say from the players group, this is from really the agent's perspective, because I don't think, unless I'm really, really off, that I don't think Orlando himself is saying, I want you to play hardball. I want you to do this X, Y, and Z. He's like, get me my contract. Do what you got to do. This is a new agent not being bashful with some of the tricks of the trade, in my opinion.
I kind of disagree with that, mainly because before he even hired an agent, there was talk that he wanted to be the highest paid left tackle in the NFL.
Right, but I'm talking about the tactics.
Well, the tactics maybe, but for me, it's they're playing the game that they have to play. This is the only thing that they have as leverage. Is they can say, well, if you don't give him a contract, he's not going to show up for week one, and that puts Kansas City at a huge disadvantage, because don't forget who week 2 is. I'm not necessarily worried about week 1. Week 2 is a huge game for Kansas City, and so that's going to be a big question mark. When you start looking at from the player's perspective, he is wanting Trent Williams type money. I said this on last Thursday's show. That's $23 million a year. Can it be done? Yes. Do I hope they do it? That's a whole nother caboodle.
No, just say it.
Honestly, it goes back to almost really the Tyreek Hill contract. If they do it the same type of way, I wouldn't care if they give him $23 million a year. If they make year 5 or 6, right? If they make it to year 5 or 6 and it's $40 million to get to the 23 APY, who cares? He's never going to see it. None of it's going to be guaranteed money, and he's not going to want it to go there because there's no guarantee. He could easily be cut and lose anything that he had. So, to me, it makes more sense. The big question that we don't have an answer to, that I wish I knew, is how many years the team asking for versus how many years is the agent asking for.
Fair.
Because at 26 years old, Brown should be looking at, he could get another contract after this if he keeps the deal short enough. The reality for the NFL is most of these deals are only going to be 3-year deals anyway. So Brown should be getting at least one more contract, maybe 2 more contracts if he's able to stay healthy and play long term.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what you have to do here is like you have to play the long game or at least look at it. Because of his age, he's in a unique position to really play that for what it is. I know you want to be the highest paid tackle. You haven't earned it. That's just a fact. You have to get to that point. So why not take an incremental step? If they're talking, we'll pay you top right tackle money, why not take that?
Because he's going to view it as he is a top left tackle in the NFL and he deserves to be paid accordingly. And I get where you're coming from. I'm not saying you're wrong. The problem that you're running into specifically in this scenario is it is very obvious that the salary cap is going to jump significantly next year and the year after that, and probably the year after that with all the different things that they're doing with the NFL. So a $19 million APY this year turns out being maybe a top 10 type money in 2 years, maybe top 15.
Well, right now, top 5 bottoms out at Ryan Ramczyk at 19.2 on average per year. We know there's intricacies of each of those folks. More importantly, number 4 is Ronnie Stanley, the Ravens tackle that his former teammate who comes in at 19.75. So I say offer him 19.75, one, and call it done. That's our best and final. Take it or leave.
I think that they offer him 20 and see if he'll take that.
Okay. That would put
Give
him
a
at
little bit
3.
of it up over Ronnie Stanley but again, I go back to what I said before. If you get to where you can put a 5 or 6 year deal together, you can put money at the back end that it's not going to matter, but it gets him his APY he's wanting, and you're not going to care because you're really looking at the first 3 years, and maybe the first 3 years is, $56, $57 million, and he's making $19 million a year.
Yeah. I mean, if you're really if you're talking about APY being what it is in backstacked contract, if you can get it to the first 3 years or a total payout or a guarantee of 57, right? We're talking 19 average right there.
Yep.
So to me, it's the guaranteed money that really counts because that's all in the end that you're going to have to pay.
Right. No, and that's exactly where I'm coming from on all of this is that if they can get it to where, I wouldn't bat an eye if they even got guarantees up to $60 million over the first 3 years. I mean, whatever. If you give them $20 million, that's fine. Even if you were to go to 21, I wouldn't like it near as much, but I'm okay. It's the question of, can you keep it to where his guarantees aren't going to be over $65 million and you're looking at paying that much over the next 3 years? Because I will say this, in 3 years, 20 million or 22 million or 23 million is probably, like I said, going to be maybe top 10, not even top 5. That's how much I think the salary cap is going to change over the next couple of seasons.
And we'll have to ask the question in the next segment when we talk about the team's perspective about whether it's really worth that. But for Orlando, and specifically for his agent, I keep coming back to the fact that getting a deal done is best for you because the alternative is playing on the tag now and this ludicrous idea of sitting out, which loses for everyone, the team and the player, because he doesn't get game checks if he does that. But they can also franchise tag him next year, and it would still be, if my math is correct, under the 20 million mark. So for the team, you really can't lose here. But for the player, he's got to keep pushing to get a deal done. And if his agent doesn't realize that because he's a new agent, then I think Orlando's put himself in a bad position.
Well, he put himself in a bad position because he should have had an agent months ago, and it took as long as it did. And now we're down to the wire, and we have less than 2 days until this has to be done. So he's in a bad position because he put himself in a bad position. So that's the reality of the situation. And we do need to talk about the team's perspective and what it's going to cost salary cap wise. And we'll do that right after this.
And after this, it's because which NFL stars move that betting line the most? Is it Orlando Brown? No, it's probably not. But starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the top 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available on the 18th on Locked On NFL, everywhere you get it, including YouTube and all the podcast platforms. Check it out. Now, so from the team's perspective, Brett Veach has done himself as good as he's done in any long-term contract negotiation. He's done two things in particular this offseason that are important. He didn't bite on the $30 million for Tyreek Hill, and he's put himself in a position here that he's in control. He can either give him a final and best offer to Orlando Brown, or he has the franchise tag to rely on. And at the end of the day, that gets it done for the organization. You will have your left tackle on the field for you or no one else. And that, in the end, is really what matters.
It's what matters, but you're playing a huge game of Russian roulette. And that's the problem with this scenario is that, yeah, it's easy for us to sit here and say that he can play for Kansas City or nobody else. And that is absolutely accurate. That's absolutely correct. Kansas City's problem is they have nobody that can really step into his shoes and play there.
True.
And if he's not able to, or if he's not showing up to play, you are at a severe disadvantage, and it is going to very much cost you in week 2, if not before that. And that's not a scenario you want to go into. So from the team's perspective, you want to get this deal done. And you mentioned before the break, the tag for next year. From my understanding, the tag is 16 this year. It's 20 next. So it'd be $36 million over 2 years, or $18 million a year, basically with the two tags. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is that that's probably not going to get the deal done. And that's generally where the team likes to stay, is what is the cost of 2 tags. Now, the other scenario, and I know we don't need to touch on this a lot, but I do want to mention it since we're talking about it. The other scenario that could possibly happen is he doesn't sign a deal and he ends up reporting to training camp or reporting before week 1 because the team agrees not to franchise him next year. And then that's a problem. Because possibly. Then you have no leverage.
Well, if he signs the tag, you can trade him no matter what. So promises, otherwise, whatever, you then have a commodity that you can make some kind of payment on. Because we have to consider who the player is as well. And Orlando Brown has had some development. I still feel that he can be a top 10 tackle. He's not there yet, but I think that can happen this year in this offense with the changes that we've talked about through the offseason.
But you agree he's above average?
I do. Yes, he's easily above average right now. He's top 20-ish overall in my mind right now. Can he break the top 5? That's pushing it, but he can break the top 10 in my opinion. But it's also worth noting that right now he is 26 years and 3 months old. He will be approaching 28 after 2 franchise tags. Do you really want to sign him longer than that? That is what becomes the question, because an average skill position player is done at 30. Lineman can go past that easily, but he's not the athletic type that can really foresee that being a foregone conclusion. It is more of a mystery with a player of Orlando's style and athleticism. So for me, I think that puts it more at jeopardy for the team feeling comfortable just doing 2 franchise tags and seeing what happens.
I don't think the team can afford to do that. I don't think that Brett Veach or Andy Reid want to be in that situation where they have no control on whether or not he's actually going to show up for camp. And I think that's the key. And I think that's why they're doing what they're doing and why they're saying what they're saying from the players' perspective, is that they have to feel like that is the biggest threat, is that you're threatening to basically allow the cornerstone of the franchise be subject to possibly career-ending injuries from the backside. Because you don't have somebody that can replace him at this point. So I think that's got to be their concern and their and how things are going to be looked at. But when it comes down to this, from the team's perspective, I completely understand why they wouldn't want to give him 23.
Right.
He hasn't. I agree, he hasn't earned it. I think he's probably closer to top 15 than just top 20. But he's not. He's not going to be a guy that is ever going to be. He's not for his size. He's not as good of a run blocker as he should be. That's a little bit of a nick. I know it's a passing offense, and I get that. But for his size, you would think he would just swallow players and open up holes and give Kansas City the ability to run the ball better than they do. And he does well, but he doesn't do as well as I think he should. But then you start looking at the pass blocking, and he loses late in snaps. He loses when he's getting beat by speed, and I get all that. The question that we don't know, and the thing that could play into his advantage if he was to play under the tag, is he could end up having a much better year this year than he had last year because he's 20 pounds down and he's changed his body. That's a huge deal. You and I have talked about that, how big that could be for him.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be a springboard to what is, if he plays on the tag, especially, it could be a springboard to a mind-blowing top 5 money, probably from another team, but it is a possibility. I think the Chiefs right now in general, for the organization, they are strapped to where the cap is. So they have to live year to year by how much that goes up, in my opinion. But they're in a good position now that, except for, like you said, not wanting to live in that world where you have animosity with your left tackle, I think they're in a position now to stand pretty much pat. I said 3, 4, 6 months ago that I'm okay with the range of 19 to 21 million. That is the absolute cap for me. If they go over that, then they've done what they didn't do about Tyreek Hill, and they went outside of their comfort zone and what their evaluation is. So as long as it gets done at that point, I think they can live with it. But this seems like this is prematurely out in the public when this is probably normal and what goes on with a number of negotiations that we never have to hear about. Bottom line, tonight, does it still happen, or does he go to the tag, or does he not show up for camp?
I want to say really quick, and I will answer your question. To clarify what you were saying, though, you're saying 19 to 21 as being like his guaranteed money, right? You're not saying overall APY.
That is what I'm saying, overall APY.
So you wouldn't go
That's
to 23?
What he's worth. No, I would not.
You wouldn't go to 23 even if it's for throwaway years?
No. Not until he performs his offense as well as that deserves, because he's not there yet.
Okay, well, you and I disagree in that regard. I think that they can easily get to 23 if they want to with throwaway years. But regardless of that, I still think the deal gets done. This is the other big thing that this is going to work against him in is that this is his first big money contract. He was a 3rd-round pick. Yep. He doesn't have the money that some of these other players do. And the only way he's ever going to get it is to sign a long-term deal. I mean, he can play under the tag, but he's going to be waiting for a game check every time he is there. So him sitting out is going to cost him more money than he's made in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not likely. I mean, he could have a war chest ready for and saved up, but the reality is that he doesn't have the amount of money that some of these other players have made because he was a 3rd-round pick, and this is his first chance at signing a contract. And he, like I said, his entire contract to this point isn't worth the $16 million that his franchise tag is going to be worth. So him sitting out games is going to be a big, big surprise, in my opinion. And it cost him $1 million a game.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to reemphasize to everyone. Like, we're talking about Chris' scenario is if he sits out games. Sitting out camp doesn't cost him anything, but a small stipend. It's game checks that matter for your rookie contract. Absolutely. So I'm completely with you. So bottom line, I still think it gets done tonight here on Wednesday. We're a little less than 48 hours from the deadline. I still feel like, despite all this media attention, and Mike Garafolo, well done. I think you're going to reap all the benefits, and it's still going to get done. But that's kind of where I sit as well. So let us know what you think. Does this deal get done? It is now Wednesday evening. We'll have this out to you as soon as we can, but we'd like your opinion in the comments on YouTube and in the reviews on Apple Podcasts, as well as over on Spotify. We would appreciate it, because who knows what's going to happen, but we want to know what you think. Did I miss anything, Chris?
No, I think that this is going to get done, and I am very curious as to see what the numbers end up shaking out to be. But I think Kansas City can get a deal done with them, and everybody still be happy for the most part. So I'm hopeful that it gets done and that we don't have to worry about this, because while Orlando Brown is in the top 5 left tackle, he is better than anything else they have anywhere close to on the roster, and him missing any time during the regular season would basically shoot Kansas City Super Bowl chances in the foot from the start.
Yeah, that's very true. And if we don't have news by tomorrow, we'll start talking about alternatives. I got a couple for you, and I know I've gotten a lot of questions. So get those ready. Let us know what you think. Thanks for listening and watching today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.